Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Open Up the Workforce, where we speak with leaders driving the future of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm your host, Ava Sadeghi, co-founder and CEO of Symba. Today, I'm joined by Harsha Jalihal, Chief People Officer at MongoDB. Harsha, would you tell our listeners more about yourself and your career story?
Sure, happy to. Thank you for having me. First of all, excited to be talking to you guys today. So I am the Chief People Officer at MongoDB. I have been here since August 2020, joined the company in the middle of the pandemic, which was an adventure in and of itself, as I was onboarding in a completely remote environment. I have about a little over 20 years of experience in a variety of HR as well as business roles. Like many people in my area of work, human resources, I didn't actually start my career in HR. I started it I was selling when I graduated from college software for a company that made financial services software. And over a period of time, drifted into HR. It took me a while, to be candid, to really figure out what I wanted to do. And I often talk about this with my own new grads and interns here at MongoDB when they start and we have our little fireside chats, et cetera, with them. I often make it a point to call that out because some people, I think, go to college knowing exactly what they want to do. And many others, like me, came out of college not really knowing what I wanted to do with my career professionally. And for 45 years, tried a few different things before I found my calling as an HR business partner in another technology company that I was working at. And it was really serendipitous, but I think I'm better off for it. Since then, my career has been defined by how I have really made choices along the way. I have never followed a formula. I have been very fortunate that opportunities did come my way. And when they came my way, I always evaluated them for what they were. One, what am I adding to it in terms of skills and strengths that I bring to the table? And two, what am I going to learn if I go do that job? And really, if they were developmentally accretive, I took them on. And if they were not, I didn't. And it's brought me to where I am. Wouldn't have it any other way. But I think the lesson learned for me is diversity of experience ultimately makes you a better professional. So that's my story.
Thank you, Harsha, for sharing. And I appreciate this mentality that you share with the new interns in that fireside chat, because many of us, even if we do know what we want to do with our careers, we might have to reinvent ourselves with the new need for upskilling and reskilling. So that openness to career change and curiosity is so valuable and important now more than ever, I would argue.
I completely agree.
Yes, and one of MongoDB's core values is embrace the power of differences. How does MongoDB encourage this and create an inclusive company culture?
You're right. Yes, we have 6 company values here at MongoDB, which really define the culture we are trying to build here in the company. And we continue to very intentionally refresh and evolve this work as we grow. We're growing incredibly rapidly. And as I think we all know, if we don't do something intentional about culture, it doesn't evolve with you. And embracing the power of differences in particular is really all about helping us think about how to include all voices and perspectives in the work that we do, and to ensure that every single employee of ours, no matter where they come from, what they look like, who they worship, who they love, feel like they belong at MongoDB. But when we think about creating an inclusive culture, to be candid, we think about all of our values and how they contribute, not just embracing the power of differences. And that's where all of our work around culture is embedded. In fact, we've worked in partnership with a company called Paradigm. It's a company that focuses on teaching inclusive leadership. And we've worked with them to validate that the 6 values that we have here at MongoDB together and in relation with each other support inclusive behaviors and inclusive culture. So a lot of our work is really focused on teaching our leaders how to build inclusive team cultures, because ultimately we know that culture is often built in microcultures, so on smaller teams, and a collective of all of that forms the company culture. So for example, one of our other values is being intellectually honest. We actually think there's a connection between that and inclusion as well, because being intellectually honest means that you're able to admit that you need input from someone else, that you don't have all of the answers, that you are willing to admit your mistakes. These are leadership behaviors that build trust and ultimately allow for everyone on your team to know that they can be their authentic selves, that we're not looking for perfection, and it's okay to not know, and it's okay to speak the truth, right? So to me, it's not just about embracing the power of differences. All 6 of our values in connection with each other are really the foundation of our culture, and by definition, it's an inclusive culture.
We appreciate that insight, and I couldn't agree more about that transparency and honesty, especially from the leadership level. I know you mentioned working with Paradigm. I'd love to understand some more initiatives and other programs that you're running to really support maybe underrepresented groups in the workforce, further that inclusion.
Sure. So if I think about what we're doing to support underrepresented groups in our company, I would put it into a couple of buckets. So there's, of course, the internal bucket and the external bucket. So from a recruiting perspective, which is the beginning of the employee life cycle, we have partnerships with organizations that help provide underrepresented groups opportunities to learn and grow. Partnerships that we have include organizations like Black is Tech, Lesbians Who Tech, Afrotech, etc. We also attend a lot of events with our industry partners, such as Google. Google organizes an event called Google Next. You may have heard of it. The AWS Summits, which are huge recruiting opportunities, candidly. The Databricks AI events and Microsoft Build, all of these big summits that our partners organize are also really places where we make sure we have a presence so that we're able to attract a wide range of individuals to the open jobs we always have. From an earlier career recruiting standpoint, we do a few different things. One, our team has shifted from a traditional core school approach that you see in most organizations to an all-school strategy. I think what this has really done is it has increased the diversity of our pipelines. It has given access to all people, no matter which school you go to be able to apply for an internship with us. It creates inclusion ultimately from that sense. We also host annual interactive programs that welcome URG students within the technology industry. We call it Early ID program. It provides an opportunity for them to actually network with leaders from MongoDB and participate in various skill building activities. And this allows us to, again, reach a wider range of individuals because it's all virtual and it's all school. And it gives them early access to some of the opportunities we have here. Also, all of our interns are allowed to join any of our internal employee resource groups, which is a really great support system for them from day one, especially if they are from an underrepresented background. And it really helps them get good insight into our culture. Speaking of ERGs, internally, our ERGs are real enablers of inclusion in our organization. We have 10 very active ERGs, and we do a lot of work to support them globally. In fact, we have a full-time senior manager dedicated to ensuring that the ERGs have the right programs and processes to support employees. These groups are run by passionate volunteers from across the business, and we're working very actively with them to think about how do you create engagement, development, and business impact for our employees that are from underrepresented backgrounds or belong to underrepresented groups. And last but certainly not the least, as part of our overall approach to talent management and leadership development, we do provide targeted development programs for URGs. Examples would include mentoring programs, new manager training, career acceleration programs for emerging leaders, and so forth. We work with a wide range of companies to help develop the content we have in these programs. So those are just some of the ways in which we are making sure that we are building a truly diverse workforce here at MongoDB.
Wonderful. And something that I picked up on and that we were really just so excited to speak with you today, Harsha, about is your investment in your interns in your early career activities. Yep. And it's award-winning. You've received a lot of recognition as a chief people officer and someone in an important leadership role. How do you maybe rally resources and continue to invest in this program over time?
In the early career program, you mean?
Absolutely, especially from your lens as an executive.
Yeah, look, the reality is I can't actually take credit for this program. I've got to be honest with you, because it was something that we invested in as a company very early in our evolution. We weren't even a public company when we started our first internship program. And that really boiled down to the fact that we are constantly looking for top engineering talent. We're a technology company. We build a database platform, and we need really skilled engineers to be able to do that. And I'm sure you know that talent with that type of skill is not easy to find. And so it started with the necessity that we needed to cast a really wide net to be able to hire the engineering skills that we needed in the organization. And it has gradually evolved into a program that has become, candidly, a bit of a leadership development machine for us. Because these individuals, because they join us so early in their career, we have a real opportunity to integrate them well into our culture, to teach them what makes us tick. And they're also so hungry and eager to learn. They absorb it very fast. And it's a high growth company. It's an exciting product. So it gives them that satisfaction and engagement. And the results speak for themselves. So many of our leaders in the engineering organization have joined us early career as interns or new grads and have grown into positions at director and VP levels in the organization. So it has built its own business case because these individuals have stuck around. We have high retention rates. They're high performers. If you look at how their performance ratings play up, et cetera, they always do well. And we've seen a lot of leaders emerge from that group as well. So it hasn't been very difficult to make the business case for it, to be candid, because the results speak for themselves. Secondly, that has also inspired is for a lot of other business units at MongoDB to explore early career attempts. So as an example, a couple of years ago, our sales team was having a really hard time attracting younger and career sales reps who are a little bit more junior and who could go after our smaller accounts and target our smaller clients. And they were having a very hard time finding them. And we said, you know what if we run an early career program for these individuals? It's not an internship program, but we basically target recent college grads who are just really smart. And we train them. We put them through a boot camp and teach them what they need to know about our go-to-market motions. And we put them to work as a rep. And it has turned out to be an incredibly successful program. So the reality is you start small, you pilot, you see how it works. And when the results results are visible, it's easy then to make a business case for further investments. And that's really been the way in which we've kept that program growing. The other business case that I think from an early career hiring perspective has been super beneficial is it is such a diverse group of individuals. It has allowed us to make our workforce more diverse, which is certainly a goal of ours. And we see that it's a source of really top talent from underrepresented groups. And so it just makes all around good sense to continue to invest in it.
Absolutely. You're speaking our language. And that's why we're so passionate about this space, because it does create access in a whole new way. Yeah. And we love your startup mentality. Pilot it, test it, see the use case. That's exactly how we approach things at Symba. And I appreciate that you embrace that. Harsha, you mentioned at the beginning that you would join MongoDB during COVID and a pandemic. And that was definitely a challenging time as teams were navigating how they build culture and a strong sense of belonging and inclusion for all employees. Can you share a little bit more about how you navigated that? Any key learnings as well?
Wow, so many learnings. COVID has been an eye-opener, I think, for everybody. I'll probably share with you two relatively interrelated learnings that I've had from that experience. The first one is what's happened with technology in the last few years is, from a workforce and workplace perspective, it has started to blur the lines between our personal and professional lives, right? You're all far too young to remember this, but when I first started my career, working, I didn't even have a laptop. And I had an old-fashioned flip phone. And so this thing where people are working in all places and there was a very clear separation between your personal and professional life. And in the last 5 to 10 years, it has started to blur more and more because technology makes it easy for us to access work from wherever we are. COVID, in my view, completely obliterated it, right? Because now you are literally now in my house as you talk to me on Zoom. You see my kids, you see my dog, you hear the doorbell. It changes the equation completely. And what I think that has impacted is two things. One is how you lead and manage in an environment like this. and two, what it does to your culture. What do I mean by that? From a leading and manager perspective, there's a story I often tell people. It's very interesting because it really opened my eyes to a lot of things. When I joined MongoDB, one of my direct reports had just gone out on maternity leave. And she came back approximately 5 months or so after I had started with, and we were still largely working from home. Obviously, our offices were still closed. We're talking December 2020. So the world had not opened up at all at that point. And she had someone to take care of her child. She lives in New York in an apartment, and she had someone to take care of her child, but the child's at home. Now, I'm a mom too. I have 2 children, and they're much older, 10 and 14 now. But I remember when I was on maternity leave and when I went back to work, what that was like. And it was very interesting to me to observe this, because when I went back to work back then, when my children were born, I was able to leave them at home and go. So it's not easy, but I was able to separate myself because I didn't actually hear them crying. But this young woman, she's on a call with me. I could hear the baby crying in the background. And I was like, and you could see the visible discomfort on her face because she could hear the baby cry. Now, there was someone taking care of her. It wasn't like the baby was by herself, but she could hear it, and it was incredibly distracting to her. So I had to stop the conversation, and I told her, I'm like, do you need to go take care of your baby? Because I can hear her crying too. And it's a very simple example of how our lives have changed and how our work lives have changed. And therefore, as managers and leaders, how should we be thinking about how our people are responding to that environment, right? So 10 years ago, I would not have thought this would not have been a situation that I found myself in. And I would imagine potentially if it was a man in my place, he might have been uncomfortable. He wouldn't have known how exactly to approach that problem or how to address it with this individual. But it pushes you outside your comfort zone because you're unable to leave your personal lives behind in a work interaction. So that really, I think, changes the leadership paradigm and the skills we need to have as managers. On the culture front, the big impact and insight for me from a COVID standpoint has been that when you're not spending physical time with each other, it is that much harder to build or maintain culture. Because we're human beings, we need company. We're designed that way. Our DNA is such that we want to be with other people. That social aspect, that interaction is necessary for us to survive, candidly. And if you don't have that, how do you build culture and experience? How do you do that remotely? And what impact does that remote work have on our culture? And we've seen this at MongoDB, where because we were in this sort of remote environment for a couple of years, we're now in a hybrid environment. We're still not necessarily all in the same place. We've also grown exponentially in this 3-year period, doubled in size, as a matter of fact, in many more countries than we ever were before, et cetera, et cetera. And all of this just means that when you are dispersed and not necessarily coming together as often as you used to, it can dilute culture. Because a lot of new people have joined. They have joined in the middle of a pandemic. They have never even been into an office before. So how do you think about culture in an environment like that? It can, if you don't think about it and you're not intentional about it, it can go wrong very quickly. So for me, I think those have been the 2 biggest takeaways from the COVID experience.
Absolutely. And I think that that's an idea of being intentional is so important.
Yeah.
Even some aspects at Symba that we kept up is how do we do potentially cohort onboard? How do we design in-person retreat so that we can at least get together and have that same essence of bonding? It's so powerful. Harsha, one of the questions that is really key to this whole executive interview series that we ask every leader who joins us is around our tagline and mission, which is #OpenUpTheWorkforce.
Yeah.
For us, we began as a social impact startup with late Congressman John Lewis, and we believe in building a future of work that supports equitable access to jobs and wealth creation. And we'd like to get your take, Harsha, on what do you believe are the next steps that talent leaders need to take in order to open up the workforce?
That's a great question. And what an incredible mission to open up the workforce. Look, for me, there's a couple of things. One is, in a business, nothing works better than building a business case. And the business case for diversity to me is actually quite straightforward. It's about innovation, ultimately. Because when you have multiple voices, different voices, people from different backgrounds, cultures, experiences coming together to talk about things that you're trying to get done in the workplace, you will drive that diversity of opinion and innovation automatically. And that's the business case for diversity as far as I'm concerned. Because if people understand that this sort of diverse opinions lead to a more creative and innovative culture, every company wants to be innovative, no matter what you make. Whether you make shampoo or you build complicated software like we do, everyone wants to innovate. Every company wants to innovate constantly. You simply cannot innovate if you don't have diversity of thought and opinion. So to me, that is the ultimate business case for why we need to open up the workforce and why we need to bring in people from diverse backgrounds into our workplace so we can continue to drive that culture of innovation. The other thing to me is really around redefining, or I could call it defining, or redefining inclusion. One of the things I did when I came to MongoDB, in fact, when I joined the company, there was a D&I leader in place. There wasn't really a clear D&I strategy. And one of the things that I've done over the last 3 years is I've actually separated the D from the I. What do I mean by that? Diversity is all about the diversity of workforce, which I just talked about, right? Inclusion is ultimately a very internal exercise. So what I mean by that is while they're very much interconnected, they are two different bodies of work. The measures of success are a little bit different. And the people who lead the work have to be a little bit different in terms of subject matter expertise. So inclusion to me is separate. I have a head of diversity recruiting who is embedded in our recruiting organization. So it's not a standalone team. It's very much part of our overall recruiting organization. And I hold my VP of recruiting ultimately responsible for having an effective diverse recruiting strategy. What that does is it embeds the process into your daily business process. Because when you do that, you make it easy for leaders to show up and work on this. It becomes seamless. It becomes natural. When it's a very standalone function, it doesn't quite work. So that's what I've done with diversity recruiting. On the inclusion side, I have combined inclusion with engagement because to me, the two are very related. The business case for inclusion in a company is employee engagement. When employees feel like they belong, they are more productive, they are more engaged, and they will stick around for a longer period of time. And this holds true for individuals of all kinds, right? It's not just about color, about gender, about race. It can be just that you may be a white guy from an Ivy League school, but you still need to feel like you belong, no matter where you are. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's one of the first things. The sense of belonging is what every human being craves. And when people feel like they belong, there's automatically engagement that comes out of it. So I've embedded our strategy here at MongoDB very much in the business case behind it. And when you do that, Abhi, I really think that you are making it easier for business leaders to lean in. And when the business leaders lean in and make it a priority, it's very easy for chief people officers and heads of D&I and heads of inclusion or whatever talent leaders you might think of to drive the programming and to create the processes that facilitate that outcome. So that's my philosophy on it.
I think that's such a powerful philosophy, and I think we need to champion more of that because that business case and these outcomes tie the whole narrative together. And it, like you said, it becomes so much easier to rally behind. We appreciate your efforts to drive innovation, to create this framework, to do this in tech, especially. It's so needed. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners today?
Oh gosh, thank you. Again, I want to just say thank you. It's really heartening to see young people like yourself champion these causes because you are the future, candidly, right? Not me, it's you. And for all of you to be able to bring this to the spotlight and the work that you're doing to enable it through the products you're building, it's really exciting to see. I wish you the very best. And if I can be of any help at any point, do not hesitate to reach out.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your support, Harsha. We're excited to spotlight your impact and work with our listeners.
Thank you, Ala. It was a pleasure meeting you. And Mitra, you too.